representation of reality by the child. As an adult, if I were to say something to you, like Randy, I say, boy, that shirt you're wearing sure sucks. I mean, would you get that at a Goodwill or something like that? Randy can just laugh. You know, when men say that, by the way, it's usually a sign of affection anyway, so it's pretty hard to get anybody mad. But Randy can just laugh, and he can take my opinion for what it's worth. He can take it, he can respond to it because he's an adult. He's got enough discriminating power to consider the source, all right? Children don't have any ability to discriminate. So anything you say to the child accepts as true. If you say, you know, you're no good, you're late, you never clean up your room, you're messy, you're not very smart, you'll never amount to anything, child has no way of blocking that. It goes straight into the subconscious mind and is locked in as a piece of semi-permanent data. The child accepts it as true and operates on the basis of that. For example, you know, if I said to you, lunch is out here, down the hallway, and over there, you would just say, okay, you go out down here, down the hallway to lunch. You don't question, you don't argue, you don't fight and raise your hand and so on. Child's like that. The child just accepts. So anything that is said by an older person, sometimes an older relative will come over, an uncle, an aunt, a mother-in-law. So read Ann Landers on a regular basis. The mother-in-law comes over and criticizes the children. And the mother says, you know, it's my husband's mother. What can I do? She's always criticizing my kids, and I don't think that's good. And Ann Landers is really clear. She says, you know, don't let her in your house. If you do, you supervise her, and you just tell her straight, don't talk to my children like that because it's so destructive. So number two is lack of love. As we talked about, lack of love is another form of neutron bomb, is there's a one-to-one relationship between the amount of love a child receives, quantity and quality, and a healthy personality. One-to-one relationship. Now here is a mistake that many parents make. Many parents say they love my kids. Oh, I love my kids. I do anything for my kids. Of course, I'm at the office all week until 12 o'clock at night, and I play golf on the weekends and go off on business trips. And so what happens is they treat their children like domestic pets. When they come home, if they're there, they may give them a little scratch behind the ears verbally. Hi, how you doing? Have a good day. Then they watch TV. And you'll find that the amount of one-on-one time that parents spend with their children, they get so busy that they don't do it, especially during the formative years. Mothers are much better at this than fathers are. But then there's a lot of people that say, well, mothers should get right back into the workforce as fast as they can and get someone to take care of the kids or put them in daycare. Now, whoever came up with that great idea is probably a parent, an adult of a really broken relationship, broken parenthood. Because the more time you spend with a child, the more you tell them how valuable they are. If you don't spend any time with the child internalizes, my mommy, my daddy never spends any time with me. It must be because I'm no good. It must be because I'm fundamentally flawed. I'm just no good. And they grow up and they become a behavior problem and they get into trouble at school and they act out and they drink and they blow up in anger and they do damage to themselves. They are fighting against this awful feeling they have inside of being of no value to their parents because their parents, especially their fathers, spent no time with them. This is a major problem in America where you have children growing up illegitimately. George Will had this wonderful column many years ago, and I thought, what a wonderful thought. They said, no child asks to be born. No child asks to be born. So when a child is born, then you are responsible for taking care of that child. And then the second quote that I read was, a child should be in the company of someone who is crazy about them for the first 3 to 5 years of their life. And I thought, isn't that a wonderful idea? Is no child asked to be born, but by gum, if they're born, they should be in the company of someone who's crazy about them for the first 3 to 5 years of their life. And many parents didn't know this. We didn't know that. My parents didn't know it when I was growing up. We sure knew it when we had our first children because we had learned. We had caught up. For children to feel fully loved, 3 conditions must exist. Number 1, the parents must love themselves. Low self-esteem parents raise low self-esteem children because they don't love themselves. So they're critical toward themselves, they're negative, they're angry, they're depressed, they have a whole lot of problems, sometimes they drink and so on. And many of us were raised by parents who didn't love themselves very much. And second of all, parents must love each other. The greatest kindness that a man can do for his children is to love their mother, and vice versa. Greatest kindness a woman can do for their children is to love their father. Because children learn about love by seeing it in their environment, by watching it experience. They learn. Many people get married. They call it a trial marriage. Most trial marriages are people have never seen true love expressed genuinely between their mother and father while they were growing up. So they have to get married to learn about it. And it's a trial marriage. It lasts a few years, breaks up in flames, usually in the 20s, mid-20s. And then they go on, and now they have an idea what it's like to be in a marriage with another adult. And often the second marriage takes. The statistic was out the day before yesterday was 50% of first marriages now end in divorce. I don't know if that's entirely true, but it may be because an enormous number of marriages are trial marriages because they've never seen love in their environment, and they have to go through trial and error to figure it out. The third factor is that parents must love the child. And there's only one way you can love the child. It's by spending an enormous amount of time with the child. There's only one way. You've got to really, really spend enough time so you really get to know the child and ask questions and listen and talk and go to movies and all kinds of things like that so that you really develop a deep down feeling of love for this child. And if you don't put in the time, nothing happens. The rule is this: a relationship only grows in value to the degree to which you invest more time in it. If you want any relationship at all, even a business relationship, a customer relationship, a relationship with a coworker or your boss, but especially with a member of the opposite sex, your spouse, your mate, or your child, you have to invest more time in it. That has to become a priority, is to spend more time in it. I had this discussion with somebody the other day. It was really interesting. I said that, you know, with love, they talk about quality of time, but quality of time is a function of quantity of time. You only get the quality moments, those unbidden, unexpected moments in a relationship with another person as a result of providing large quantity. And the moments come unbidden. The moments come without anticipation. The moments come as a complete surprise. The moments just happen. There was that moment. And you remember it forever. Somehow you remember it for years, but you've got to provide large quantities of time for that to take place. So they must love the child. And many parents meant to love their child, and they even say, I love my child. I just never spend any time with them. I have no idea what they're doing or thinking. A friend of mine who was, was talking about these things, about how important it is to be a good father. His daughter was going on a ski trip, and it was about 5 hours away, and she missed the bus. And so he had to drive her to the ski trip. And so the bus left at 7 o'clock, and she overslept. So he had to drive her to the ski trip, so he drove to the ski strip, and they're going through mountains. This is in Utah, so remember this, they couldn't pick up any radio. So there was no radio on, so they talked for 5 hours. And she was 16 years old. She said he learned more about his daughter in 5 hours than he learned in 16 years. He had no idea who she was, what she thought about, what her concerns were, what her fears, her ambitions, her desires, her goals. And he thought he was just a great parent. He was just shocked. I mean, he never got over the shock. And from then on, he always drove his daughter to skiing. He always created that 5-hour block to drive her to the mountains for skiing and never had the radio on. One of my rules is never travel with someone in your life with any music on. Leave it off. Leave it off so that you can just talk. Because if you create a vacuum of silence by not having it on, it'll fill with conversation. As soon as you turn it on, all conversation stops, shuts down completely. So just a very small thing. Barbara and I travel all the time, and we never have anything on. We will never listen to anything. We just talk. Actually, I just listen. The only, which nobody believes, all right. The only way you can really love a child is by spending a high quantity of time with the child. And this has to take precedence over all things. They did a study of 50 parents on, I believe it was Mother's Day. I think it was Mother's Day. Or Father's Day. Maybe it was probably Father's Day. But they asked them, what's the biggest regret that you have with regard to your grown children? And 49 out of 50 had the same regret. Can you guess what it was? I wish I had spent more time with them when they were young. I wish I had spent more time with them when they were young, because if you miss that time, you can never get it back. You can never go back. You can't make it up. You can't go back and catch up on those years. So 49 out of 50 said their biggest regret as parents is I did not spend enough time with my children when they were young. So when Barbara and I heard that before we had Christina, our first child, and we made a vow that that would never be the case with our children, that we would spend enough time with them. So releasing your brakes, if one of the three above conditions existed in combination with destructive criticism, you'll have grown up with guilt. And guilt is the feeling of not being worth very much. Guilt is the most powerful and biggest negative phenomena in our society today. We have a plague, like an epidemic of guilt, that is pulling our society down and destroying the hopes of so many people. And guilt is an insidious, it's like a low-grade emotional infection that sits in there and that fouls up everything that we try to do, say, be in life. So, when we don't feel that we are worth very much, we feel worth less. And the greatest problem, a feeling of guilt, leads to a feeling of worthlessness. Interesting, I've spoken with the doctors who work with AIDS patients when AIDS was much more of an epidemic. They say the one characteristic of an AIDS victim was an overwhelming feeling of worthlessness. They felt absolutely worthless, and as a result, they engaged in promiscuous behavior that led to them getting AIDS. And it's because they just felt so worthless, they just punished their bodies because they felt so worthless for a whole variety of reasons. The feelings of guilt and worthlessness are expressed in the thought or attitude of, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And this is one of the greatest single problems we have as adults. We look at others who are doing better and we think they're better than us, I'm not good enough. We think we want to start our own business and we say, I'm not good enough. We want to start our own practice. We want to do something new and different. We want to run a marathon. And the first thing that axes us, it cancels the thought is, wait a minute, you're not good enough. Hey, when I started off, I didn't graduate from high school. It took me a decade to get over this feeling of I wasn't good enough. And even if you work hard and succeed and do well, you feel like an imposter. It's called the imposter syndrome. You feel guilty. You feel they're going to find you out because you're successful. Really, they don't know. Way down inside, you're really not that good. They are going to find out. People who've been raised with feelings of guilt have this feeling that somehow they're going to lose it all and be put back to the beginning again. They're always in danger of losing everything. No matter what they've achieved, they have this uneasy feeling that it's all going to be taken away. I don't know if anybody here can identify with that. Now, those who have been raised with destructive criticism and lack of love experience self-hatred and self-doubt. Whenever you see an adult who is having problems, you can trace it back to the first 3 to 5 years. Whenever you see an adult who engages in destructive behaviors, either for themselves or others, you can trace it back to the first 3 to 5 years. And that's why it's so important that we get rid of the feelings of guilt. So we find that guilt is used for 2 reasons. Number 1 is punishment. Parents use guilt because guilt was used on them, and it was used on their parents. And throughout the ages, there has been what I call negative religion. Negative religion is based on guilt. You must inculcate in the child a feeling of being guilty before the age of 6 or 7, or you'll never get them. They've got to feel awful. They've got to feel like sinners. They've got to feel like they are bad, like they came into the world as a sinner and are bad. I have a friend who was an evangelical missionary in Mexico. And I asked him, I said, how do you go about evangelizing in Mexico? He said, well, we pull in, we get a donor, a supporter, a sponsor who translates, and we pull into the center of a small town, and we say we're going to have a meeting, and we call people around this truck that's got speakers on it. He said, and then my job is to convince them that they are evil and sinners and have fallen short of the glory of God and are going to hell for eternal punishment. We've got to get them to accept that, or they won't be open to the evangelical message. That's the opening line. I think, oh. And so you find negative religion is based on beating the emotional crap out of the child. So they are raised feeling guilty and unworthy and undeserving. And if you can't do that, you can't get them later in life, because later in life they say, this is BS. I try to say you're an evil person and you're going to hell. You'd say, yeah, go stuff it where the sun don't shine, you know. So what we did we raised our children with no religion. We told them God loves you and we love you. And they say, well, I don't love God. I don't believe in God. And they said, oh, God believes in you, so it's okay. Do what you want. So our children have grown up with no religion. And you know what? They've grown up to be wonderful young people with high values and great characters and everything else. But we've never imposed a religion on them because we know how dangerous it can be. So guilt is used as punishment, and parents use it as punishment as well. They say, How could you dare do that? And I was expecting you to do this, and you said you would do that, and I was hoping you would do this, and and they just work you, and they start it at a very early age, because you've got to get the guilt hooks in the young, or adults would just laugh at it. So second of all is the control, and they use guilt to control you. Many people are controlled by guilt by long distance. The mother can call you up and say, oh, I was expecting you to call. Why didn't you call? You were going to call. I haven't seen you. Why don't you visit? And they can use guilt at long distance. They can put those hooks in over 500 miles. So mostly mothers are brilliant at this, but fathers as well. And because they learned it, and the reason they use it for punishment and control is because it's easy. You can do it sitting down. You can do it from a couch. You don't have to get up. You don't have to hit the kid with a stick. You can just use guilt and grab them from the inside and pull them. I've met so many adults who are still feeling guilty because of what their parents do or did to them, and their parents are still working them. So, the adult manifestations of guilt, see if any of these apply to you. Number one, feelings of inferiority, feelings of inadequacy, feelings of undeservingness. There's a school of thought that says that the feeling of undeservingness lies at the root of all negative emotions. Well, there's many things, but the feeling of undeserving, being undeserving of good things, being undeserving of being really happy. That's why if you're really happy for a time and you've been raised with feelings of guilt, you'll feel, oh my God, it's going to be taken away. Something's going to happen because I don't deserve to be happy all the time. Well, the fact of the matter is you deserve all the happiness that you can legitimately enjoy by doing something worthwhile in the world, by treating other people well and by making a contribution. People say, well, I feel I don't deserve. They call this fear of success. It's not fear of success. It's a desire. It's a feeling of undeservingness. When you tell people you're entitled to all the money you can earn if you do it by legitimately helping other people and making a profit. And they say, really? I said, you deserve it all. You deserve the house on the hill and the big car and everything else. If you earn your money, because the word deserve comes from the Romans de servus, which is from service. If you earn your money from service, you deserve everything you can possibly make. I've had many people walk out and transform their financial lives with that one concept. And now their whole focus is not on the feelings of guilt, but their focus is on serving other people higher, better, inexpensively, more convenient, and so on. Number two, destructive self-criticism. People who've been raised with a feeling of guilt are always running themselves down. Oh, I'm always late. I never do this. I always forget. I'm terrible with money. I can't remember anything. Is they're always saying negative things to themselves. And what that does is it keeps the parental destructive criticism, keeps it going, keeps the plate spinning as adults. Number three, they're easily manipulated by guilt. You can be manipulated by strangers. Here's an example of the way they're taught in flight school. The flight attendants, they come by, and instead of saying, would you like another glass of water or Coke, they say, will that be all? Will that be all? Is there anything else? And they say it with just a little bit of an edge, like it would be a real inconvenience for me to bring you something. And what they'll do is they say, oh, no, I'm fine. I don't mind sitting here for the next 3 hours with nothing to drink while my whole head implodes from lack of moisture. So what you do is you realize people are trying to use guilt on you, and they use it in restaurants. They use it in aircraft. They use it everywhere. And just don't allow them to do it. That person is a victim of a drive-by guilt shooting. They were taught to use guilt by their mother. And now they just pass it on. And why? Because it works. They get really good bang. They don't have to serve you anymore. Because you said, no, I'm fine. I don't need any more. Yeah. Number four is they use guilt and blame generously. Remember, the evil that's done to the children is done onto their children. So they use guilt and blame all the time. They're always blaming their other people. You did this and you did that, and why did you do this and how did you do that, and so on. I'll give you an example. My kids come home and they get a lousy grade. I never get angry for them for lousy grades. They go off to college and they get lousy grades and they don't even send them home. Imagine that. They're even getting the grades. And so what happens is that they use the blame on other people, and it works. And we just keep it going generation after generation. And you can tell if a person has been raised with guilt, it was the mother that was raised with guilt, and the grandmother that was raised with guilt, and the great-grandmother that was raised with guilt. And why? Because it works. And the fifth is they use victim language. Now, victim language is, I can't. I can't. I'm too weak. I'm too little. I'm too small. I don't have the ability. Other victim language, one of the worst of all is I'll try. I'll try. I'll try. I'm trying. I'm trying. A friend of mine uses this example. He takes a person and he puts a pen down on the stage, and he said, here, he said, and he takes and grabs a hold of his back of his shirt and belt. He said, pick up that pen for me. And so the person goes to pick it over and he pulls. He says, pick up the pen. And he goes to pulls again. He says, pick up the pen. This is in front of the whole audience. And he said, go, I'm trying. I'm trying to figure it out, but you're holding him back. He said, great. He said, come on, thank you very much. Sends him back to his seat. He said, see, the fact is, you're either picking up the pen or you're not. There is no trying. It's like Yoda. No try. Do or no do, but no try. So eliminate the words, I can't. Eliminate the words, I have to. Eliminate the words, I'm trying, or I'll try, or I'll do my best. Have you ever invited somebody to a party and they said, I'll try to get there? What does that mean? It means I am not coming. I'm trying to signal you in a nice way. I'll do my best to get there. I'll try. I'll do my best. Winston Churchill had this great line when he'd given a command during World War II, and the general said, Mr. Prime Minister, I will do my best. And he said, stop here, just a second, he said. It is not sufficient that you do your best, but that you do what the situation requires, and that you do it with dispatch. I don't want to hear about doing your best. I want to hear that the job will be done. Because when a person says, I'll do my best, they're kicking the back door open for failure. I'll try, it's kicking the back door open for failure. So don't use victim language, and don't allow people to use victim language. Say, I will or I won't. I would like to, but I'm not going to. I decided not to. Thank you very much, I'm not going to. Could you do this, could you do that? No, I would like to, but I don't have the time. And just tell them straight. Whew. Okay, so to rid yourself of guilt, here are the keys. Number one, eliminate destructive self-criticism. From now on, never say anything about yourself that you do not sincerely desire to be true. If you don't want it to be true, because the reason that you're late is because you've decided not to be on time. That's all. I can guarantee that you would be on time for every appointment. What if you've got $10,000 for every appointment that you showed up 5 minutes early for or 10 minutes early for? You'd be on time for every appointment for the rest of your life. In other words, if you decided to be there, you'd be on time. The reason you're late is because you have not decided to be on time. That's all. Cher was once accused. She arrived at a meeting and the person said, you're almost late. She said, where I come from in Hollywood, that's called being on time. I thought that was funny. All right. Yeah. All right. Number two, refuse to be manipulated by guilt. When a person tries to manipulate you using guilt, you say, excuse me, are you trying to make me feel guilty? And you smile at them. And nobody will admit it. They'll all lie through their teeth. And they'll say, oh, no, not at all. You say, that's good, because I thought you were trying to make me feel guilty. And when they try it again, mother, say it again. Are you trying to make me feel guilty? And just say it with a cheerful voice. And the third time you say, are you trying to make me feel guilty? They'll finally burst out, they say, yes, I am. You say, well, it's not going to work anymore because I don't feel guilty and I'm not going to do anything if you try to make me feel guilty. And if you keep trying to make me feel guilty, I just won't talk to you anymore. But. And what that does is it forces them to start to engage in adult behaviors, in adult conversation. You have to break people of the habit of manipulating you with the use of guilt. So you just say, excuse me, I'm just curious, are you trying to make me feel guilty? You're not attacking them. You're just saying this,